I started my career as a model. So I would actually negotiate a lot in that role and, often negotiating different modeling gigs. So I was 15 years old or so.
Let's talk about what you're building, Ruth. What is it and what does it do?
We are building AI agents to close the gender wage gap.
So there's a study that found women who don't negotiate their first salary lose over $500,000 in earnings by age 60. Is salary negotiation the first thing Ruth is also solving for?
The skill set of negotiation is going to be increasingly important in the age of AI because anyone can build an app. Anyone can write anything using a ChatGPT. So what's going to set people apart is their ability to negotiate their work.
You recently posted an article called What Agentic AI Can Do for Women with a very interesting research study. Tell me more about that.
A man was being told to ask for $400,000 and a woman with the very same qualifications, same city, same everything was being asked to ask for $280,000. So $120,000 discrepancy.
You're at an OpenAI town hall, 50 people. You raise your hand and ask Sam Altman directly about the gender wage gap in AI. What did he say?
He believes that AI can be an equalizing force, right? So we already are seeing the gender wage gap being projected to take over 200 years to close. I think that's just a number that's absolutely unacceptable.
Hi, Valerie. So we are sitting next to the building where you hosted America's first women's vibe coding hackathon, and you moved to the city a month before that. What happened here?
Yeah, the Transamerica Pyramid Center is one of the most iconic buildings in San Francisco, if not the world. And when I moved out here, we had gone to different hackathons and we realized that there were so many men at these hackathons building and there wasn't really a place for women to come and feel like they were, in a safe space to build empathetic products with AI. And so my co-founder and I really sought out to, put women in skyscrapers and have them build AI for social good. And so this building means a lot to me because this is where we hosted our first ever women's hackathon. We ended up doing our second one at the Hearst Tower. So this is definitely our first most inaugural event. And I think it really inspired us to kind of make this a bigger movement and a greater series that would just showcase architectural masterpieces like this one. So it's been a very just meaningful building.
That is amazing. And then after that, you decided to permanently move to San Francisco.
Yeah, it's definitely been the best thing I have ever done in my career. I think the last 10 years I spent in New York, obviously were super transformative. I was working in startups and got all of that experience, but being here in San Francisco around other people who are building and are super ambitious, I think has just really motivated and inspired me to a completely different level.
And now let's talk about what you're building, Ruth. What is it and what does it do?
Yeah, we are building AI agents to close the gender wage gap. And we're really focused on a few things, but primarily is really helping position any woman as a thought leader and making sure that their businesses and their personal brands are populating in LLMs. That's a huge, huge goal of ours. I consider it a pretty existential problem if women aren't populating in these LLMs. And additionally, we're also focused on the bias that exists within LLMs. So there's gender bias that's been reported where it's telling, women with the very same qualifications as men to ask for less in their salary negotiations. And so we really wanted to create a platform where women could come and actually trust that they're getting the right benchmarks, that they're also being told, these are the right scripts so that you can go and ask for what you deserve. And that's really been kind of the driving force is how can we make sure that women feel like AI is something that's for them too?
And before Ruth, you mentioned that you got laid off. Walk me through what happened.
Yeah, I've actually experienced 2 layoffs before I was even 25 years old.
Wow.
So I think for me, the idea of job security was something that I just felt like was a fallacy. And I've always been very entrepreneurial. So after my second layoff, I just felt I didn't want to go and apply for more jobs. I also at the time had been starting to post on LinkedIn. My previous employer was like, you need to start posting on LinkedIn as a thought leader to bring more awareness to our company. And so I knew that there was something there. I started posting. And after about 3 months, I had over 3 million impressions. Then experienced the layoff. And I was like, okay, do I go get another job or maybe I can be the job? And so I started to use my sales and my marketing skills that I had accumulated over the last 10 years living in New York, working in startups, and just started to implement that into, really treating the Valerie Chapman personal brand as like a business. And that was super transformative and allowed me basically to not have to go back to corporate America or work a traditional job.
Oh, that is amazing. Wow. And were you expecting that? Like, what was your first reaction when you got told about like leaving?
Yeah, I think at first you're like, oh, it like bruises a little bit, of
Yeah.
course. And you're like, okay, what am I going to do? There's, of course, the financial instability that comes with it. Living in New York, one of the most expensive cities in the world. I basically sat down with myself. I have a big whiteboard in my room and I sat down and I wrote with my expo markers. I was like, I am going to build the infrastructure of a one-person business and I'm going to give myself 3 months. So AI was so helpful in helping me connect all the dots for like, what did my career look like over the last 10 years? I had done so many odd jobs, so many internships. I felt I had learned such a breadth of knowledge, but I really was struggling to connect the dots. And so AI helped me with that, helped me figure out what's my I help statement, what's my mission. If I could only stand for one thing, like in this amazing life that we have, what would it be? And so it gave me so much clarity. And then from there, I really focused on like building my personal brand, posting online, getting super visible. And I think that clarity around my mission, as well as being willing to put myself out there, that was just like the secret sauce and like it really created magic in terms of like being able to create a career on my own terms.
That's awesome. So everything happened like everything like happened for the better.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you're meant for this,
Yeah, it's like bad to kind of say that getting laid off was the best thing that happened to me, but it truly was. And I found actually with other creators who are like full-time, they've experienced similar things where they've gotten laid off and then bet on themselves, and they also agree that it's the best thing that ever happened to them. So while it can be scary and definitely a time of like uncertainty and there's those feelings of rejection, I definitely felt there was like a huge silver lining because you finally get to just bet on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And so you mentioned how you would use AI to rebuild. Tell me more about how that would look like.
Yeah. So for me, I actually started with just putting my resume into ChatGPT, probably like 2023. No one was really talking about it. I was like, let me try this out. I've always been a big proponent of being an early adopter. So popped in my resume, was like, hey, like I said, help me connect the dots. And then from there, I figured out what are the 3 content pillars that I could talk about. So I started off actually with like, what can I talk about all day that I wouldn't get bored? And so for me, that was human behavior. I had studied that in school at NYU, in addition to other things. I like made my own major at NYU. I went to Gallatin. So that helped me understand the importance of having an interdisciplinary perspective. And I started to just like really analyze myself from like the outside in. And I think I also had a lot of experience as well with like working with other founders and digital storytelling for businesses throughout this time in New York, but I'd never really taken the time to do that on myself. And once I did, I think that's like where everything changes. Like really looking at my personal brand as a business was the huge unlock. And AI was obviously like my thought partner throughout all of that, because like while someone may come to me and be like, hey, Valerie, can you give me advice on this and this? I never had that person in my life. So it's a cliche to be like AI was that for me, but like it certainly was.
Wow. And then at what point did you realize this isn't just like my story, but this is like a product?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, I gave myself those 3 months to build the infrastructure of a one-person business. And initially, I wasn't getting brand deals. I was doing one-on-ones with women entrepreneurs, and I was helping them position themselves as thought leaders because at that point, I had amassed a few million impressions on the platform. I knew what I was doing. And so I knew that I could consult at that point, make a few $1,000s, get some regular income streams. And then I could also do workshops. So I started to do workshops with nonprofits and different organizations. And I think the real unlock for me was when I was in a room of about, 50 women and I asked them like, who do you help? It was a workshop on personal branding and AI. And I always open my workshops with who do you help? And what I found was women didn't know how to answer the question. There were straight up crickets in the room and you could hear a pin drop. And that was the moment when I realized that, we could build potentially a software that would help position any woman as a thought leader and help them figure out who it is that they help. And that was really fascinating and super eye-opening.
That's amazing. And you wrote a piece in Fortune that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. So the argument is AI was supposed to close the gender wage gap. Instead, it's making it worse. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think right now we're living in a time where people are obsessed with AI, especially here in Silicon Valley. In other parts of the world, maybe not so much, right? But I think there has been a lot of this rhetoric about how AI can solve climate change and perhaps it can be a solution for food insecurity and all these different big systemic problems. And I felt, no one was really talking about the gender wage gap and how to use AI to close it. And so, like I said, as I was using, all these AI tools to figure out what my mission was, I sat down with myself and I was like, who inspires me? Who are the women that inspire me? And I thought about like the women's suffrage movement and all these like really powerful women. And then I was like, wow, it would be so cool if I could do something to close the gender wage gap. And then it clicked for me. I was like, maybe AI could be the thing. And so it felt at the time like a pretty ridiculous notion, maybe like a very lofty, thing to believe in. But I do believe that it's possible, especially because of the effects of compounding. I think, right now, like AI is being trained on like all the information in the whole world, right? And I think the more that we give these models data to train on, the better the models will be. And so my hope is people will come to Ruth to build their thought leadership presence, to share their thought leadership, to share their business acumen, and that will then help train the models so that women are being taken seriously in the context of business.
Yeah, and there's this stat. So 27% of ChatGPT users are women. Only 28% of women report using AI regularly versus 45% of men. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, well, I can't say it surprises me, and I'm hopeful that maybe those numbers are higher.
Yeah.
I, sought out initially to close that gender wage gap, not really through Ruth, but through making content. So I would get up every morning and be like, let me make a video about AI to educate more women. I felt like if other women saw another woman talking about this technology, that would help close the adoption gap. And so I do feel like I've probably at this point gotten several thousands of women to use AI, which is really cool, just on the power of content and distribution. And then I think, where my hope is we'll get it to another level is through software, right? And through really reaching people at scale. And so while those numbers are low, I'm not really that surprised. I think like AI has always been a boys' club in the same way that business has been, but I don't think that has to be the case anymore, especially with the development of vibe coding tools. And I'm really excited. I think this is really a moment for women to kind of lean into their entrepreneurial, spirit. And I think that lies within all of us.
You're at an OpenAI town hall, 50 people. You raise your hand and ask Sam Altman directly about the gender wage gap in AI. What did he say?
Yeah. Well, he said, he believes that AI can be an equalizing force. And he said that primarily because of the things that people can build now, right? And for the most part, I do agree with that sentiment. And I think the reason why I agree is because my story was, I was laid off. I'm not making any income, right? And so then I used AI to make an income from being myself. So I think that's possible for so many people. And I would never have sought out to build Ruth if I didn't believe that to be true.
Yeah. And so you were telling me that, you do these workshops where you ask a room full of women, who do you help? And yeah, the room goes silent. And then there's also this McKinsey stat where it says women are nearly twice as likely to be mistaken for someone more junior than men, 37% more likely to have their ideas taken credit for. Is that what the personal brand problem is about?
Then? Yeah, I think it definitely plays a role. I think the reason I'm so bullish on women building their personal brands is because I've seen as a woman the opportunities that come to me. I used to spend, before I was posting online, I used to spend a lot of time doing outbound. I would, craft the perfect email and then like maybe I'd get a couple responses. But I think the moment I started being visible, now I wake up and I get crazy emails every day. I'm like, this is insane. I couldn't have even made this opportunity up. And that is something that I hope for any woman, especially, mothers and women who are dealing with so much invisible labor. Like I want them to wake up and be excited about checking their email, not dreading it. And I think that's possible, but it does take, that bravery and the courage to show up and tell your story. And, we're building Ruth to make that as easy as possible for women.
Yeah. And so what can Ruth do that women can't already do with ChatGPT?
Yeah. I mean, I think chatbot and the chatbot interface has been transformative for so many people, but I think this next wave of AI is really going to come down to very, personalized user interface experiences. I think when you look at the Claudes and the ChatGPTs of the world, like I think it's very obvious these things were designed by men. Like there's like a manly feel to it. Yeah. And so with Ruth, we've definitely created the user interface and I would argue it definitely has a woman's touch. And I think that's one big factor for why people will come to Ruth, is they'll feel it was truly designed for them. And then additionally, you know, we're doing a lot of research and working with experts in the gender negotiation space to make sure that we are not, you know, giving benchmarks that have that bias in there. So I think there's also like the deep research element that we're focusing on as a company, in addition to really creating a product that has a strong user interface for our specific customer, which is women.
Yeah. What advice? So, if someone wants to start posting on LinkedIn, you mentioned having pillars, right? Like, what do you want to associate yourself with? How could people go about, you know, creating their first LinkedIn post or first social media post on Instagram?
So I think probably the most important steps that I took was that I asked myself, what is my mission? And it seems like a big question, right? But if you, like I said, only have one thing in this world that you could truly make an impact in, what would that be? And I think that's the question that people should start with. And from there, so I figured out, okay, I want to close the gender wage gap. And then you kind of have to reverse engineer, okay, how do we go about this? And so for me, I wanted to pick 3 pillars that I knew I could talk about all day long, but that weren't necessarily related, but they were interdisciplinary, like you could connect them. So what I mean by that is my pillars, for instance, right now as they stand today, are AI, personal branding, and the future of work. And so when you continuously talk about the same pillars, and even in your LinkedIn, if your last line is follow me, Valerie Chapman, for the latest in AI, personal branding, and future of work, anyone can do that simple framework. And over time, through repetition, all of a sudden you become the voice who people go to have conversations about those things. So I truly believe if I didn't do those tiny things, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And it's a very repeatable framework that anyone can implement.
Yeah. I want to try to do this example on me. So, because I had never really thought about this myself. With my pillars, I think it would be startups, podcasts, like things about like podcasting, things about startups, things about maybe lifestyle, but also like founders, like uncovering, because I want to like uncover the story, like founder stories.
I would probably do yours as startups, storytelling, and new media, right? So you talk about the intersection of those 3 things. So you don't want to do so broad where you're like, oh, I talk about lifestyle, because that means a lot of things. That means like I like to get my coffee. It means I like to go shopping. It means I like to go to Tuscany. So it can mean so many different things. But when you like hone down, all of a sudden, like if a reporter or someone in the press wants to do a piece on new media, which is a really important topic within the zeitgeist, they're going to be calling you.
Oh, yes. Okay. So I'll do new media, storytelling, and like startups and founders.
Yeah. And like people who are obsessed with one of those things will come and flock to you. Someone who's obsessed with all 3 of them, you will be their favorite creator.
Yes. Yeah. And then the I help statement would probably be like, I help. Like the thing is, I want to help founders like get seen, like become more visible. So
that's it.
I
help founders get seen and become visible.
Seen and found. I love this. Thank you. I'm gonna change it.
Yeah, it like makes all the difference.
It really does. So there's a study that found women who don't negotiate their first salary lose over $500,000 in earnings by age 60. Is salary negotiation the first thing Ruth is also solving for?
Yeah, salary negotiation is, in my opinion, going to be like the skill set of negotiation is going to be increasingly important in the age of AI, because anyone can build an app. Anyone can write anything using a ChatGPT. So what's going to set people apart is their ability to negotiate their worth, their ability to send the email and be like, hey, I saw this opportunity. You should probably give it to me. That skill set is going to be so important. And so I really wanted to make sure that women had a place that they could trust to come and make sure like they're negotiating and also feel empowered, right? Like women don't negotiate as much as men. That's been reported in research. And I think for me, I felt like if we created the infrastructure and marketing and, podcasts like this, perhaps we could get more women first off to negotiate, and then ideally to have them negotiate with the right benchmarks that aren't biased, and that the compounding effects of that would be pretty incredible. And I think that, not having something like that leads to compounding losses, right? So we already are seeing the gender wage gap being projected to, take over 200 years to close, some people say. And I think that's just like a number that's absolutely unacceptable. And it's going to take building infrastructure, building movements to absolutely change the way the trajectory is currently headed.
Yeah. Tell me about your first negotiation experience.
Oh
How
my
did it
goodness.
go?
I feel like I've been negotiating my whole life. Well,
Really?
primarily because I've always loved being like a content creator online. So negotiation, I think like is like in my blood.
Oh, okay, amazing.
But not like by choice. It was definitely like because
Okay.
of survival.
Mhm.
I like started my career as a model. So I would
Wow.
actually, negotiate a lot in that role. And, often negotiating different modeling gigs and being like, oh, you should pay me this amount. And that's kind of when I got my first start. So I was like 15 years old or so.
Wow.
And then I think as my career continued, and now as I'm a content creator as well as a founder, I'm managing all of my brand deals. So I'm constantly trying to be like, okay, am I asking for enough? And then if I think that I can ask for more, I always go for the bigger number, even if it means like, oh, I could lose the whole brand deal. I just think it's that exercise, like that getting in the reps of asking for more than maybe your brain is telling you should is so important, because I think as women, we tend to undersell ourselves.
Yeah.
And we really shouldn't.
Yeah, because it's also so hard to like, I guess like the first time you negotiate, it's hard to figure out like what is your worth.
Yeah.
But I guess like tips of like I've heard other people say is like look at like, so in terms of like salary negotiation, look at like the base range of like what people pay for your role and like a location, and then go from there. Maybe like try to ask for a little bit more and see like, the more you go, they'll find a middle ground, right?
Yeah, I think like you don't want to be too crazy about it that people are like, oh my gosh, not this girl, right? I think for me, because I've been on both the brand side, my background has been in influencer marketing. So I've actually negotiated on the brand side, and then I've also been the content creator who's getting the brand deals. And so I've seen both of those perspectives on how people write that email and the way that they're crafting it and all the different things that one can negotiate, at least in the context of a brand deal. You're negotiating your rate, then you're also negotiating pay terms, you're negotiating usage. So I think AI, for instance, is a great resource for figuring out what do I ask for, and just like knowing like that there's all these different nuances that you can negotiate. It's not necessarily always compensation.
Yes, exactly. So I'm one of the people who like I'm very scared to like ask for. I like sometimes would go for like lower price of things. Like I remember I was doing brand deals too when I was like a little bit like younger during the pandemic, and there's these like protein bars, and I was ready to take like $20 for like, oh, just give me free protein bars. Like, but then my dad really helped me figure out like, no, like yes, these are really good protein bars, but like you're also like promoting them, so you should like get paid. So that was like really cool. Oh, and then recently, so with like my new job, I also negotiated, which I'm so proud of, because with my past internships or like my past jobs, like I would just go for the first thing they would give me. But now I actually like, because I was talking to like this guy, he was like much younger than me, like 19 years old. He negotiated and he negotiated so much. I'm like, being around those people, like if they could do it, why can't like, right? Why can't we?
It's totally psychological. It's in our head. I think a big part of it is like social conditioning. Like women feel like, oh, like if I negotiate, like I'm being problematic, or you know, they're not going to like me, or they're going to think I'm difficult. Like those are all things that I think every woman, not to speak in like absolutes, but I feel like for the most part, most women have felt that same way. I certainly have. And I think that what gives me confidence now to ask for more is I'm like, no, I like, wake up every day and I post on the internet. Like that's something not a lot of people are willing to do. And so it also gives you leverage. I think it builds confidence because you're getting those reps in all the time. That now if someone comes to me for a brand deal, I'm really thinking like, what does this mean for my personal brand? Like, does this first of all make me look good, or am I making them look better? And I think like you have to ask yourself the question of like, who really has the leverage here? And I think like business at the end of the day comes down to leverage and making sure you have the most leverage in the situation. Creating leverage. So like if you don't like the offer, for instance, like create more value. And then when you create more value, you have more leverage.
Yeah. And having more options too is always like good, because you can use those as like, comparisons kind of. Wow. Yeah. No, that's really good. That's amazing. And so let's talk about some big takes. There's a lot of rhetoric right now, especially from women, around being apprehensive about AI, the environmental implications, the ethical concerns, the general unease. Is that a valid stance?
Yeah, I think absolutely it's valid. It's a really complex, topic, right? Like AI does have environmental implications. And I think women do tend to care about things like climate change more than men. That has also been reported on. And so I'm not surprised that women are apprehensive in this moment. And I think that it's very valid. But I also think that you could argue it's a privilege to opt out of a technology of this caliber. I think as someone who I grew up in the suburbs of Miami, like middle class family, like I don't have the option to not use AI personally. I don't have a trust fund waiting for me. And so for me, using AI is like what's going to get me to like another level, hopefully to the point where I'm making enough income to where I can help others. And so that's like my whole goal. Like I wake up and I'm like, how can I help people? Like truly, like I don't care if that's like corny, that's truly like what drives me. And I think like having more access to money, more capital, like we can make a bigger impact. And so like it's a very privileged take, I think, to opt out of the technology, especially when, you can use the technology to solve some of these problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I would say, yeah, you're a missionary then.
Yeah.
Because there's a missionary. I was talking to this about this with another founder, and the mercenary, they do things for like money.
Yeah.
That's like their goal. The missionary is like they strive for just the mission itself.
Yeah. I mean, money's not enough. Like money's not enough. I think, yeah, that doesn't drive me.
Yeah, that's really good. And the conventional wisdom is that AI is a great equalizer. It democratizes access to tools, information, capability, levels the playing field. Is that happening then?
Yeah, I think it is starting to happen, right? Like I can just, think of a couple of friends of mine who have recently gotten laid off and have used AI to build, their own businesses, to start communities. So I think definitely, I think it's helping democratize access. But I think we're just getting started, we're now at a point where, women are coming together to do these hackathons. I was just at OpenAI headquarters they did like a Women Who Codex event yesterday. And so like, those are rooms that previously like they didn't exist. Like there weren't rooms of women building. And so I think once that momentum continues to build and more rooms like that continue to exist, that we're going to see a lot of change happen.
Yeah. McKinsey says AI could add 4.4 trillion to the global economy if women keep lagging in adoption. What happens to that 4.4?
I mean, they're not getting a piece of the pie if they opt out, right? Like, I think I moved from New York to San Francisco because I obviously want to be a part of that moment. Like, I want to build a technology that truly impacts and helps people. And I think it's very exciting that so many people can do that now. And I think like it's not just about the money, but at the end of the day, like when women have more money, they help more people, and they should seek that out because it's important that we make sure that the world is more equitable. But it starts with having the right leaders, having people who are bold enough to like stand up and be like, I may not know what's happening in AI right now, but I'm going to try to like be an early adopter here. I'm going to try to figure it out. And at the very least, like if I don't quit, I win. That's like one of my big mottos. And I think for me, like I was using like Lovable when it just came out, when it wasn't even like very good. I was like, I'm going to stick in this race because I know that eventually as the models continue to improve, this is going to be something that changes the world. And I feel like we've already started to see that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm really surprised how uncommon AI is to like some other parts of the world. Like when I was studying at University of Waterloo and I was in the communications program.
Yeah.
And a lot of the classes I was in, no one like uses AI. I was showing to my group members like, hey, so we can use AI to like summarize our meeting notes and everything. And they're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You can use AI to help with your research. And they didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But then the engineers and the computer science students at Waterloo, they're on top of it. They know what's up.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I went to NYU for school and I was actually catching up with a friend of mine who I went to school with, who I would consider like one of the smartest people I went to school with.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, I've never used an AI chatbot. I was like, what? You're too smart to not be leveraging this because it would absolutely supercharge the way you're thinking. And, she was a woman, but she was like, I'm scared of getting AI psychosis. I'm like, I'm like, we need to do something to educate. Like, that's why these rooms of like women coming together is so important, because otherwise, like, people are living in their echo chambers with like their 3 friends who use AI, and then all these other people are like, I'm anti-AI, and now we're creating these like wars essentially within ourselves. And I think what's most important is, if you have an idea, like, you need to understand that AI can truly help it manifest in the world. And that's definitely been the case in my own life.
Wow. Wait, what's the AI psychosis? Wait, what does that mean?
Like, when people just like feel like they're just talking to their chatbot, and all of a sudden it's like making them think like a certain thing that maybe isn't true. And so they, you know, and that is a very real thing. It definitely happens to people. But, you know, I think like people tend to like over exaggerate. And it's always people who like never have actually used a chatbot. I'm like, what do you mean? So I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. I was talking to this other founder yesterday. He was talking about, so giving AI to younger, to like children, and how if they grow up with AI, like that could maybe play some kind of negative part. There's obviously positives, but also negatives. Like, they wouldn't be able to differentiate an AI to, like, you know, maybe a person like on the phone, for example. Like, that is, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think about it a lot, actually, like, especially how AI, and especially in the context of education for young people. And I think for me personally, if I were to have a child right now, and let's say they're like 13 or 14, I probably wouldn't want them to use AI for like that, you know, those most formative years going on to like 13 or so. But when I think of like, you know, when I started to really have this interest in entrepreneurship, you know, I started like my first business when I was like 8. It was like a little massage business in my home. And so that wasn't like a real one. But when I was about like 14 or so, I started to build my first app and started to prototype it. But I didn't have like the technical acumen at the time to really bring it to fruition. And so I think around that like 13, 15, when kids really start to figure out like, oh my gosh, it'd be so cool if I could build this and this, that's, I think, a good time for them to start implementing AI. And I think if I had AI back then, I mean, I think that would be nuts. And I don't even know what would have happened in my life.
Yeah. The conventional startup advice is ship fast, iterate, find product market fit, then grow. You came in with basically the opposite approach.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So my co-founder and I would say like our strength is in community building. And so when we moved to San Francisco, we didn't know too many venture capitalists. Like, we didn't come from that world. So we knew that we had to lead into our strengths. That's why we hosted a hackathon in this building. And I think for us, like, we're not just building a product. Anyone can build a product. Like, so we're not building a product. We are building a movement, because for a mission as big as closing the gender wage gap with AI, you have to change the way people are perceiving this technology, especially women, who a great swath of them, you know, are very apprehensive about the technology. I think community is what's going to change that. And so for us, we've been doing these events in person, really making sure that people realize AI can be used for good. So that's why our hackathons are called AI for Social Good. And the task when people come to our hackathons is, you need to build a solution that can help solve a systemic problem that exists within society. And I think that has just been like a really empowering message for women, and they're very excited when they come to the events. Many of them post organically. So our events, while they're really impactful in person, they've also gone viral and reached, you know, millions of people as well, and even inspired hackathons to take place in Singapore. So I think the effects of community can never be underestimated.
Yeah. And the brand building. So before you even started building Ruth, you already had a brand and you already had an audience of people, right, who were interested in what you were up to. And so I think that helped as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like as a founder, you have to be visible, right? Yeah. Because people don't, you know, want to just buy a brand. They really want to like believe in the person behind the brand. Yeah. And I think increasingly that's the case nowadays, especially with these parasocial relationships that exist online. And so I think having a personal brand has absolutely changed my life. But I think it's very easy to be like, oh, Valerie just pops out of nowhere, when that really wasn't the case. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been posting on Instagram since I was, 13 years old, taking it more seriously around like 15, when I had a modeling agent who was like, you need to start posting on Instagram. I was like, okay. And at the time, he's like, yeah, the models who are posting, like, they're getting more jobs. So I knew that there was something there as it pertained to the importance of social capital. Yeah. And then over the years, as social media continued to evolve, and 2016 happened, and 2017 happened, and like all these years started to go on, social media just became more and more important. People started to build real followings and real businesses. And I just continued to work in that space, primarily more like helping. Like I have helped Forbes 30 under 30 founders like build their digital, footprint and their brand. And so I was learning so much, and I knew it was important. But I think the moment that I really locked in on my personal brand, everything changed. And I think I often see, these amazing people who work at startups and they're, head of marketing, but they spend no time on their own marketing. And so they're, just giving all their best ideas, all their best energy. And I think one of the things that I hope changes is that some of these people who have been just giving all their energy to these big corporations realize that like maybe they should take a little bit more ownership and look in the mirror and say, what do I want to stand for and how do I want to market myself?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's so important for people who are working, at companies like as like marketing people. I think it's really important that they also kind of post on their own.
And it actually makes the company that they're working at even more compelling, right? Like we're seeing the rise now of the corporate influencer, which I think is super cool. And now is becoming even more valued within these organizations. It's, right now, like if you're not willing to be visible, it's almost seen as like a weakness. It's almost seen like, you're like too insecure to show up on the internet, where like, the real world exists now on the internet. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see how people adapt to this change, especially now that like AI agents are making decisions for us, especially in the context of hiring as well. Like people don't have an option anymore. They have to show up or else they're not going to populate within the LLM searches.
Yeah. Can we also talk about, so some corporate companies, they don't like when people post their own stuff.
Yeah.
Like I got in trouble once. I guess it depends on the industry. Like if you're working at, a private, like if you're working for like, a private firm, maybe they like to keep everything private, then like maybe they don't really like that.
Yeah. No, it's a serious issue. I mean, I also have a hot take about that. I personally think that should be illegal. I think it's really messed up to silence your employees.
Yes.
That's a hot take. But like, for instance, my sister, she works, at a financial institution, has spent most of her career at banks. And so she's like scared to post on LinkedIn. And it makes sense, right? There's a lot of like privacy, a lot of regulations involved in that industry. However, I think it's important to like humanize your employees, especially at a time right now where there's so many layoffs and people are like, AI is taking over. Like, I think what people really need is like those HR departments that are really empowering people. And so like with Ruth, for instance, we do intend to take this enterprise so that we can go into these organizations like the Reddits and the Canvas and go, hey, like we want to train your women on, how to use AI. And then what's cool is that, because AI is basically an infrastructure that you're building, you can build the product and then on the back end fine tune like, hey, your employer doesn't want you to talk about X, Y, and Z topics. So those things will never come out of the outputs that Ruth presents, but you can still share your story in an authentic way. And so that's probably one of the things that excites me most about being in the software space now.
Yeah, I'm really excited for those. I think those are very important workshops to have. Yeah, especially like, I think it's much easier to do like going into enterprises, like big corporate companies, like that is like, like that's really cool. So you mentioned you've been on social media since 2016, so it's a very long time, or
I don't know. Like, I downloaded Instagram the first day I could, but I feel like I started taking it seriously around like 15, 16. Yeah.
Okay, and then what took you the longest to figure out?
I mean, for me, like I wish someone told me to start posting on LinkedIn sooner.
Okay.
So I started on Instagram, and then I feel like I was a little bit late to the TikTok game. And I was never really able to like make an income off of like being myself. Like I would have like 10 social media clients and I was managing all these accounts. So I knew that there was income to be made from existing on social media and doing that kind of work. But I think like if I had known the power of LinkedIn, like when I was in high school, it would have totally changed my life. And what I mean by that is I personally think that LinkedIn has the strongest infrastructure out of all the social media apps during this time of AI because there's less bots, right? Like you can't really be a bot on LinkedIn.
True.
And so that's pretty defensible in the age of AI. And I think also it's a platform that's really, it has that idea and that perception of being a place where people come to share their business acumen and they're professional. And I think that we're going to need more of that now, especially when people are like getting laid off. They're going to need to go to a platform to tell their story, to talk about their interdisciplinary perspective, and also to be in front of the right decision makers. So why LinkedIn is so valuable, in my opinion, is that you can reach out to anyone. So like I got into sales out of college because I had a mentor who was like, if you get into sales, you can do anything. And so for me, I look at LinkedIn through the lens of a salesperson. Whereas if I have an idea, I go, okay, I want to reach out to HubSpot and I want to pitch this concept. And then I find, who's head of influencer, who's head of marketing, find their email using Apollo.io, which is one of the tools that I discovered in my sales career. And that's how I, lock in brand deals. Is like, you have to do outreach, you have to introduce yourself, you have to build those relationships. And LinkedIn is where all of that is happening.
Mm-hmm. And the way I found you was through LinkedIn too.
Exactly. And now all my favorite new friends are all like my LinkedIn friends. Because they're all on the same wavelength. They all know what's up.
And you interviewed the
CMO of LinkedIn.
CMO of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's how I found you. What are some cool takeaways you got from that conversation?
Yeah. I mean, she really focused on like people building their personal brands and telling their stories. And she was super bullish on video content on LinkedIn specifically, which I totally agree with. I think for me, when I first started on LinkedIn, I was like, let me just figure out my voice. I actually was talking about like body language. So I wasn't even talking about AI when I first started. I would just like write these posts and I would analyze like Oprah's handshake because she has like a very unique handshake that she does.
Okay.
And so, you kind of inch your way in, right? You start with the writing and then you're like, okay, it's safe to be seen by people, right? And then you're like, let me do a video. And so video is when I actually amassed so many impressions. So I was posting for like about 3 months on LinkedIn, started with the writing. And then by month 3, because I implemented video, I had over 3 million impressions on the platform. And then by month 4, also because of video, I would say, I had gotten invited to LinkedIn headquarters in the Empire State Building. And their team was like, they were like, you're a pioneer in AI. I was like, I've just started talking about AI on here. And so I think that really is a testament to how powerful video is and the way that people can connect with you and then really like build that trust. Like you don't have to necessarily like come out of the womb an expert on something, but if you are the person that's willing to talk about it the most, you are, essentially the person who is top of mind.
Ooh. Okay. Oh, also, what is Oprah's handshake?
Yeah.
Can we do
Yeah. Okay. So you shake my hand. So Oprah will like meet you, look you in the eyes, and then she'll like put her hand over to like establish some level of like warmth, but also establish like dominance. Like, hey, take me seriously. So she does it like a smile on her face like this, but it's also like, don't mess with me.
Ooh, okay, well, let me try it.
She'll be like, hi, it's so nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
And like it's gentle. It's like almost, it can even be like a tap, but that gesture, like, there's so much science in body language that as a child, I would just watch YouTube videos and like psychoanalyze. And it was just like my hyperfixation topic.
Yes, I've seen those like body language videos.
Yeah.
What are some other body language like things you learned?
I guess like if you're talking to someone, usually like if you're interested, you want to like make sure your feet are like pointing at them.
Yeah.
I guess like I always try to like maintain eye contact for the most part. Like a lot of people like are scared of eye contact. I think eye contact is so powerful. So like if I walk into a room, I often go to like events all by myself. So I walk in and I don't know anyone.
Yeah.
And so instead of just like loitering around like a loner, you just want to like go up to the first person you see and be like, hi, what's your name? I'm Valerie. Like just talk to them, like be friendly with like just a really like magnetic energy. Like I always try to like walk into a room and be like, how can I like spread light here today? And then, and I think like usually like that shows off in your body language, right? Like people can sense a radiant energy and they want to be around that. So it's probably a really important aspect to, I think, my success so far in business.
Okay, yeah. No, I agree. You have such a radiant energy and like,
thank you.
It's very powerful. You recently posted an article called What Agentic AI Can Do for Women with a very interesting research study. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I've been fascinated by this topic of gender bias in these LLMs and particularly within hiring. And so there was a study done out of Germany back in 2025 that showed that a man was being told to ask for $400,000 and a woman with the very same qualifications, same city, same everything was being asked to ask for $280,000. So $120,000 discrepancy. So that's what I mean when I talk about like the compounding losses that could happen if women are going on AI and being told to ask for less than they deserve. Like, think about that, right?
Yeah.
So first off, we have the problem that women don't negotiate as much as men. But then if they go and negotiate, they're going to be told a whole salary, like $120,000 is one person's full salary, if not two. And so I think it's just astounding, those numbers. And that's just one instance. So throughout that woman's life, the compounding losses that she will experience, let's say she negotiated that when she was like, I don't know, 30. Yeah. Imagine how much she will lose at 60, at 70, because she decided to take such a lower offer than the man with the very same qualifications.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's existential.
Oh my gosh.
I would argue. Because it means that women, not just that women make less, but it also means that there's less money going into the home, right? Because now, men and women and families are like working together to provide for their families. And I think that just like the way that families and these systems are run now has changed. So we need to make sure that women are getting the same as men, because it actually harms men in the end when women get paid less.
And who's in charge of like changing that? Like, how do we make sure, like,
yeah, it's a complex topic, right? Because there's private institutions that can kind of do whatever they want, and laws have been passed, and apparently, the equal pay, like we got that down packed. Like up until a few years ago, like I thought we were equal. I was like, they passed the laws, like we're good, but there's just still so much like systemic problems, and unfortunately, there's just like that bias where like women don't negotiate, or maybe they're being given an offer that's substantially less, and that just happens time and time again. And so I think the conversation around policy is, of course, always important. But I think why I built Ruth is because I want women to have that autonomy and that ownership over their own lives. Like we can't wait around for policy to change or for your employer to decide that you're worth the same as a man. Like ain't nobody got time for that personally. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really important to just be your biggest advocate.
Okay. Be your biggest advocate. You talked about the venture world being gate-kept. A lot of things founders need to know that nobody tells you. What's the thing you've had to bulldoze through that you wish someone had just explained?
Yeah, there's so much about the venture space that's been fascinating. I think one of the reasons why I wanted to move to San Francisco is because I wanted to learn about it, right? Like like I said, didn't grow up around venture capitalists, or I didn't even know anyone who's an entrepreneur. And so for me, what I feel like I realized, and I wish I learned sooner, is that relationships are so important. So like, a lot of the times you'll see these founders who will be like, oh, I raised in a matter of days, bada bing, bada boom, it was so easy. And like this idea of speed is just like, everyone talks about like how fast they did it. And I think at the end of the day, what they're not telling you is that they've known these investors for the last 2 years, or that they've been building the relationships for the last, year and a half. And I think that's something that I wish more people talked about. And I think what I would advise, founders who want to raise at some point, and I'm also still in this journey, is like, start, like genuinely building relationships with investors before you even have an idea.
Ooh, okay. Is there like an investor you have in mind that you've like built a relationship before?
Yeah, I mean, I've built relationships with amazing ones now, and actually having a personal brand has led to a lot of inbound from venture capitalists. So I think that's another reason why I'm so bullish on women building their personal brands, is that while capital allocation for women and women businesses has been substantially less, right? Like in about like the 2% of venture capital going to women, like that number is of course, irritating. Yeah. But I think having a personal brand, definitely increases your surface area for opportunities, as well as, meeting the right investors.
Nice. So you have a co-founder. Yeah. Tell me about that relationship.
Yeah. So my co-founder is amazing. And I honestly couldn't build Ruth without him. I think it's so important to have someone who has like a big vision, and he definitely has a huge vision for life and like where to take the company. And that's really empowering. I think what his strength in particular is in building movements. So he actually came from the entertainment space, used to be a music producer, then worked at Sony Music as an A&R helping develop artists. So he would take an artist who's like relatively unknown to like, headlining Coachella. And that takes a lot of just like knowing what the consumer wants and knowing how to make someone a movement. So he's been instrumental in kind of helping me take like, all the great stuff that I've been doing in my career and like just amping it up to the next level. So for instance, that conversation that I had with Sam Altman, he was there architecting like, this is, once you get in the room, this is the question you should ask. And then once you ask the question, this is how we're going to blow it up, right? And so from there, we went and we pitched to different, news articles, and we pitched to Fortune, and we were like, let's craft this story. Those are things that maybe my brain wouldn't have thought of. I probably would have been like, let me go on Cloud Code, let me just go on Codex all day, right? And he's very much like, no, like press is such an important aspect, and that's something that he learned from the entertainment industry that I think people in software and in the startup space could definitely learn from.
Oh, wait, that's so awesome. Having him by your side. And how did you guys meet?
So we met through mutual friends, and we actually had another company together before this called Inform, where we would curate guest lists for different companies like Vox Media, Nordstrom, and Sparkling Ice, and all these incredible companies would come to us, and then we would help bring all the Gen Z thought leaders into the room. So we, like I said, always really valued bringing community together, not just community for community's sake, but really a very curated room was our specialty, and we were getting paid, thousands of dollars by huge organizations to do that service. And so as we continued and sought out to build Ruth, we did a very similar thing. Like when we did this hackathon here, we didn't just invite anyone. It wasn't open to the public. We were very selective. We went on LinkedIn. We figured out who do we want in this room. We invited basically every VC in the city because we knew it would be that initial touch point for saying, hey, I'm Valerie Chapman and I just moved to San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Awesome. So if a founder, you kind of talked about this a little bit, but if a founder is watching this and they haven't touched their LinkedIn since their last job change, what are they doing wrong and what's the first thing they should change?
Yeah, I think the first thing that people should change is their headline.
Okay.
So right now I see a lot of people who are marketing at X, Y, and Z company, but they don't actually say who it is that they help. So the thing that changed me was actually taking a course from this guy named Justin Welsh. And he's a big LinkedIn content creator. And I took his course. I paid about $100. I took the beginning of the course. And one of the first things I learned was the power of this I help statement. So this format of I help X, Y, and Z do X, Y, and Z. And so mine quickly became I help women use AI to build powerful personal brands. And so when someone would land on my page, they immediately knew what I stood for and how I could help them. And so that tiny tweak changes everything. It increases your outbound. More people are going to answer your email because when they click on that link of your LinkedIn, they know exactly who you help. And then you're going to get more inbound because, like I said, people know who you help. And so they're going to be like, oh my gosh, can you help me build my personal brand? Or can you help me tell my startup story? I need to be more visible. But if you don't use those words of who you help, people just think you only care about yourself and you're self-serving.
Yeah. And then for the first post, should they also do a similar post, a little introduction post? So this is me, this is the kind of impact I want to bring, maybe a photo, something.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts. When I've advised women, that's often one that they feel comfortable. But I actually never did that. I didn't do hi, I'm Valerie.
Okay.
I just got straight into it. I started talking about body language. I was let me just get a post up every day. Let me, figure out what my voice is on this platform. And I think the only way you can figure out what you really stand for is by showing up every day, posting, getting no likes. And then eventually you get 3 likes and then 13 likes. And then you're wow, that person always likes my post. I have a fan in him, right? Yes. And then I think there's also this concept of 1,000 true fans. Have you heard about this?
No.
Oh my gosh. So I feel it was a thing a few years ago that people were really talking about where it's this concept. I think the guy's name is Kevin. I don't recall his last name who created this concept, but you basically just need 1,000 true fans to make an income, essentially, is the concept. So as I was posting on LinkedIn, I realized all I need is 1,000 true fans who are super diehard about what I stand for and love my content. And that was really my goal. I was it's not about having 100,000 followers. Okay. It's just about having 1,000. And so that's why it's so important to answer people in the comments, to respond to those DMs, because over time it accumulates and you have it's not that hard to build 1,000 relationships if you really lock in.
Yeah. What are your big inspirations, role models?
I would say probably Melinda Gates is a big inspiration, especially her recent initiatives in the women and healthcare space. I also love Lorene Powell Jobs. I think I really look up to women who are very philanthropic with their wealth. I think that is something that is very noble.
What do you mean by that?
These people obviously have a lot of wealth, right? Yeah. And we're seeing people the Elon Musk of the world who also have a lot of wealth. And I think it comes down to what do you do when you're in that position? Okay. And I think those are women who try to use their voice for good, who constantly show up. Yeah. And they don't have to do that. They could be in Bali, at a resort, but instead they're fund. For instance, Melinda Gates funds the Win Challenge, it's an initiative that's giving $60 million to nonprofits who are focused on women in the workplace. So I think that's so cool. Once you get to the point where you have money, what are these other ventures that you can create and how can you actually allocate that wealth? I think that's, a true sign of intelligence, in my opinion, and the best way to showcase one's empathy.
Ooh. And then do you have any resources you recommend? Any like books or anything starting out that you have really touched you?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite books that just like initially comes to mind is Big Magic. I read it years ago in a nail salon. And there's this like, one section of the book where they talk about the magic of like creative ideas and how if you don't capitalize on an idea that comes to you, it's like a bumblebee. And so it'll go to the next person. And that has been something that's really changed my life, because now when I get an idea for a video, I try to not sit on it too long. I try to act as quickly as possible. Yeah. And I feel like that's when like the magic happens. And even, friends of mine, like Avni Barman is a content creator, and she says the same thing. Like when she gets an idea, it's like, boom, I just got to do a Yap video in 1 minute, and then she'll get like millions of views. And so when I talk to all these other content creators, they have a very similar philosophy, and it's shown that, it ends up going more viral, and actually like permeating within the cultural zeitgeist when you act on things faster.
That is really good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if Ruth works, it's working, so what changes? What does a world with Ruth in it looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I want the world with Ruth to be a place where women feel super empowered, where there's so many women entrepreneurs who like can't even keep count. I want to see, capital allocation increase a lot for women and women businesses. And I think also I just care deeply about like making sure women are getting their stories out there and overcoming this hump of like, I'm scared to be seen. I really want to tackle that. And I feel like doing things like these podcasts and actually building software, doing in-person events, like I think we are making a dent already in terms of empowering more women to do that. And I think the change that we'll see, like we can't even really quantify what happens when 1,000 women understand their mission deeply because they used AI to figure it out. Yeah. Or when, 100,000 women do it, or millions of women who are locked in on their single mission. I think that would absolutely change the world. And that's the mission that I'm on.
That's very beautiful. And then what do you have coming up? What are exciting like initiatives, projects that you're working on right now that you want to share?
So we are getting ready to launch our beta. So we're super excited about that. And then we're also focused on adding more research out there, right? There's not a lot of research on gender bias or on how women are using AI tools and AI agents now. And so we're actually putting together about 1,000-person study. I can't like disclose too many details, but one of the big things that we're doing at Ruth is, of course, the software side, but also making sure that there's more research out there on the market, I think is super important. So like building out that institutional research arm is definitely a big focus in the coming months.
Wow, that's very exciting. And what can you tell me about your product that you haven't talked about publicly yet?
Ooh. I guess I haven't talked about the beta publicly.
Yes, okay.
So with the beta, we intend to launch our Ruth Beta 100. So there'll be 100 content creators, people who've been close friends of the brand since we started, and having them on board, but also not just rolling out like a typical beta. Of course, we want to get our user data, but because my co-founder and I come from more of like this marketing and this PR lens, we also want it to be, an opportunity for people to create content about it. And so we're thinking about it in very savvy and I would say like very different ways to how most people have rolled out their beta.
And what are like the technical parts of Ruth then? Yeah, how do you incorporate a lot of like technical? Is it like
I think probably the most technical aspect of Ruth is probably our negotiation agent. That's probably the one that's like the most time consuming, because there's just so much research that we need to think about in the context of building out a user interface where women feel like they can actually come and negotiate their salaries. So, we're talking to people like Linda Babcock, who is out of Carnegie Mellon and is an amazing researcher in the gender space. And so taking kind of her insights and the work that she's done and published in books and figuring out how can we translate all of this amazing work into a user interface so that women feel truly equipped, like this is the best research-backed user interface. So I would say from a technical perspective, that is definitely one of our more fun challenges to tackle because it hasn't really been done before.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Val. This is incredible.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to stay tuned with everything you're going to be up to.
Thank you. I'm so excited to watch all your upcoming episodes too.
Yes. This is going to be a good one.
Awesome. Thank you.